webinar, Creating Dementia-Friendly Celebrations. I am so excited to have you all here with us today. My name is Laurel Gumpert. I'm the Educational Program Coordinator here at AFA. And today I have with me Kara Rogers. She is our Senior Social Worker. Some of you may know her from our Excellent Care Connections webinars. So she's going to be hanging out with us for the question and answer portion. So Kara, if you want to say hey.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Laurel. Excited for today's presentation.
Awesome. So just some heads up. All lines are muted, so you won't be able to physically speak, verbally speak, but we're super looking forward to questions. So if you have any questions at all throughout this presentation, please just type it in the question box on the right-hand side of the webinar page, and we will get to them. So let's get started. Okay, so our goal for this presentation is to create an inclusive environment to enjoy holidays and celebrations while really understanding and adapting to changes and being aware of the many emotions that holidays can bring. So we understand that the holidays can be a really stressful time. I feel like for me, it feels like there's just a never-ending to-do list. And by January 1st, my head is just spinning. But also during the holiday seasons, it's such a joyous time to be surrounded by people, seeing people you may have not seen in a while, and that you can feel really every emotion during the holiday season. So in our discussion today, our focus isn't on eliminating problems and stressors that occur during the holiday season, but rather finding ways to cope and create dementia-friendly celebrations that are fun for the whole family. So today we're going to go through preparing for celebrations, adapting celebrations, and talk about some really fun and meaningful activities to create a dementia-friendly environment. So first, we may want to prepare a person with Alzheimer's in case we're having any visitors or just in general for the holiday season. If we are having people to see them or having different opportunities to connect, this is a way to engage. And so we can also do this if you are or are not having guests or visitors. This is just a way to kind of enrich the holiday season if that works for you. So first, we may want to begin showing a photo or a video of a guest or of family or friends. This can increase familiarity, and we also encourage, telling stories. So if there's a picture, this is you with Cousin Billy at your favorite Broadway show just a couple years ago. But we don't want to get angry or upset if they don't remember Cousin Billy. That's okay if they don't remember. But we can still talk about these really fun memories as a way to keep them involved and keep them talking about their life. We also want to guard against fatigue. Fatigue can be particularly distressing for individuals with dementia because it can cause sundowning and wandering. So just briefly, wandering is getting lost. It's common among people with dementia. It can happen really at any stage of Alzheimer's disease. And wandering can occur for many different reasons that include stress or fear. They may be searching for someone or something, for boredom, basic needs like needing to use the restroom or wanting to go outdoors and get some fresh air, or following past routines. So 3 main triggers for wandering include emotional triggers, which include fear or loneliness, physiological triggers like sleep issues, dehydration, being hungry, or their environmental triggers like overstimulation, medication management, or just feeling kind of restricted in your environment. So we want to pay attention to these three main triggers of wandering and ensure that special attention is being paid at particular times of the day, like when a person may be more likely to be bored, tired, hungry, or thirsty. We also want to look at sundowning. So sundowning is not a syndrome or a disease, but it's more of a description of symptoms, one of which happens to be wandering. So in the late afternoon and early evening, it can be particularly difficult for some people with Alzheimer's disease. This is when they may experience sundowning, which includes symptoms like restlessness, agitation, irritability, and confusion that can begin to worsen as daylight begins to fade. Sundowning can continue into the night, making it difficult for people with Alzheimer's to fall asleep or stay asleep. So as a result, this can lead to trouble sleeping and functioning well during the day. So with the changes that come in the holidays, we want to be aware of sundowning. It's when symptoms can be experienced, and especially with changes in daylight and there being less daylight, this is something we just want to make sure that we keep a look at. And then third, we may want to arrange a phone call for a person with Alzheimer's disease and a visitor or friends and family. So this can be a phone call or a FaceTime, but we really want to encourage you to ask your person, what do they prefer? So maybe a couple months ago, they were totally into FaceTime, but now it's a bit overstimulating and they're just really not into that right now. So that's okay. So you can ask them what mode of communication works best for them. And we also want to find that's conducive for them, find a time that's conducive for them. So we don't want to have it interrupt their routine. So with wandering, if you notice that your person typically gets bored around 3 p.m., a little restless, maybe that'd be a really nice time to facilitate a phone call. That way, this isn't interrupting the regular scheduling program, but which can be distressing if your routine is disrupted. But it's just another nice activity to enhance the day. So we also want to make sure that this is a pleasant holiday season for everyone, including caregivers. So these are some ways that we suggest to manage caregiving stress during the holidays. So first, ask for help when needed and find that support system. We encourage people to really, just be open and honest about what they're going through and what they're feeling, and relying on whoever you can. We also have support groups here at AFA, as well as we can help you find support groups in your area as a way to really have that system. We also encourage making time for yourself, having that opportunity for self-care. So whether that's through the use of respite care or just quick moments of meditation throughout the day, it's important to take the time that you need for yourself. We also encourage getting moving and getting that exercise, and it's a really positive outlet to reduce stress and can just be really beneficial. So whether that's through group fitness classes or for a 15-minute walk, you can do what works best for you. So in this presentation, we're not talking about, major life changes, but small things that can make a really big difference and can help manage holiday stress. So we want to reduce stress, like I said, as much as possible. And chronic and extreme stress can really reduce our immune system and can lead us to get sick, which we do not want. So one way to fix that is through nutrition. So we can make a point of eating a balanced diet filled with fruits and vegetables and drinking a lot of water just to stay in tip-top shape. Same goes for sleep, just so important and honestly seems hard to come by during the holidays. So we want to find a way to prioritize sleep, and that's going to make a real difference. And then lastly, we want to take it one day at a time. Looking at the holidays and a never-ending to-do list of what we want to do can just be overwhelming. So we want to set realistic and achievable goals in incremental steps. So literally 1 step at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 moment at a time. It's also a really excellent reminder that not everything has to get done. If you can't vacuum today, that's all right. The goal is to take it 1 step at a time and move forward in the best way possible while still enjoying the holiday season. So giving yourself a break is a great first step in reducing stress and making yourself a priority as well. So how can we prepare holiday visitors if we are having people either come to a place to visit with our person, or if we're doing it virtually as well? So first, we can provide an update on how the person is doing. If a family member or friend hasn't seen them for a while, you can update them on what's happening, what they like, what they're interested in, and what's going on in the disease progression. This, kind of relates to the previous slide about just being open and having that transparent channel of communication. We also want to offer communication tips and strategies that may be beneficial for someone who may not see your person very often. So some of our strategies that we talk about in other presentations include approaching gently and with an announcement. So saying, "Hey mom, it's me, Laurel. I'm going to come and sit next to you. How's that sound? We're going to chat." Also speaking to them on their level. So we're both sitting so we can make eye contact and make that connection. You can tell them whether or not your person responds well to touch, if they want to be touched, if they don't want to be touched, how to incorporate the 5 senses into communication, and focusing on feelings rather than facts. And most importantly is to not be patronizing. This is Kara's phrase, her trademark phrase that I steal for every presentation is, people with Alzheimer's disease are accomplished adults and they should be treated as such. So our communication strategies need to reflect that fact. And, if these communication tips seem really interesting to you, Kara is actually holding a continuing education workshop on November 17th as behaviors as forms of communication, where she gets into a lot more of that than I can in this time. So third of how we can prepare holiday visitors is suggesting a planned activity. So it's something that people can do together, and that really helps uncertainty subside. And we're going to get into planned activities in a little bit. So life is different after the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, and it's not supposed to be the same, and that's okay. So our job here at AFA is not to pretend that everything is going to be the same, but we understand that things are different. So we want to adjust in order to better care for and support our person who is going through this. So that means changing celebrations throughout time. However, it's important to note that that doesn't mean, sweeping declarations of canceling holidays and changing everything, but it means seeing traditions, holidays, and celebrations in a different lens. So prior to the celebration, what are some things that we might want to focus on? So first, we're going to want to avoid over decoration. So that means things that are super overstimulating, that can make social situations overwhelming, confusing, and just anxiety provoking. So we want to be mindful of sparkling lights that blink, or extreme clutter that make things just difficult. We also want to pay attention to triggering decorations. So if you have something that's mirrored, that could cause confusion. So being aware of what we know works best and implementing that with our decorations. We also want to avoid safety hazard. So that means for big decorations, if you may have them for the holiday, keeping them secure and keeping it stable so a person won't fall or cause any harm. Also, if we want to light candles, how can we find alternatives to this? So like battery operated candles. They have battery operated candles that also have a scent to them too. So it's just like literally like a regular candle without the flame that can cause potential harm. And third, which I think is very important, we want to keep the person involved in the season as much as possible. So just because things are different doesn't mean they shouldn't be a part of the celebration. Based on their needs at the moment, which can change from month to month and day to day, can change what we're doing and find a way to keep them involved. Next, we can adapt past favorite traditions or create new traditions. If, for example, you all are like me and watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade every year, which seems to just seemingly get longer and longer every year, you can still do that. You can still have that tradition, but possibly it'd be helpful to take breaks in between, since it can become boring or someone may become restless. But this is certainly a tradition that you can keep, or finding new ways to enhance that tradition as well. And lastly, we want to be open with our family and friends who may be interacting with us during this season. So how can we create a safe and calm space? So we want to reduce clutter and things that can be overwhelming. Our main goal for the holidays is let's keep things simple. We also want to avoid fragile decorations. So if a glass decoration breaks, someone can get hurt. So how can we find alternatives to fragile decorations or just general dangerous things? And we also want to avoid decorations that could be mistaken for edible treats, candles or ornaments or things that can be perceived as food. Someone can mistake it as food, and that could be really dangerous. In my experience, on my Christmas tree, we have a pickle ornament. In a German tradition, on Christmas Eve, parents would put an actual pickle on a Christmas tree, and in the morning, the first kid who found the pickle on the tree, it's hidden because they're both green, would get an extra special treat. So we have an oddly realistic pickle on my family Christmas tree. That may not be appropriate. So finding other ways to connect with the traditions, but keeping things safe and making sure that we're not having decorations that could be mistaken for these edible treats. We also want to play favorite music, play music that invokes the holiday season and whatever that means for you. And this is a way that we can use music to communicate. And then lastly, as a reminder of the season to keep things safe, we can have plug-in scents. So we're still engaging our sense of smell, but just a little differently. So I want to address three main components during the holiday season, during the celebration that we can ensure. So we want to maintain the person's normal routine. If they wake up every day at 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. it's lights out, let's keep it that way. Kara and I are actually doing a presentation next week about a healthy brain. And in our research, I've been so surprised that some of the biggest things that we can do for a healthy brain is just staying regular. And that means keeping a routine, having that regular scheduled programming. So regular meal times, regular sleeping. And this routine just promotes familiarity, and it's going to reduce a lot of anxiety. And then second, we want to connect with loved ones through technology. This is great always, especially with COVID. This is a way for us to connect no matter what our circumstances may be. So we really want to utilize this technology. But also going with maintaining a routine, if you don't want to drive 2 hours to someone's house because it's really going to mess up your routine and the day-to-day, that's okay. Using virtual technology is a great way to stay connected, and you're going to be staying healthy during this season as well. And my personal favorite suggestion is to take on a strength-based approach or an asset-based approach. And this focuses on individual strengths and not on other deficits. So maybe recently you've noticed that mobility has become a real issue. But instead of dwelling on that, we're going to realize that this holiday season, during this celebration, our person is really into music right now. They keep humming, and that's great. That's their way of communicating with us during this time, is through the music. This allows us to focus on the positive attributes. So how can we adapt holiday activities? What can we do that you may have done before that we can change and adapt to make it dementia-friendly? So we can prepare together. For me, during this time, I feel like I'm always baking. So a lot of these examples involve baking. So if you want to prepare something together, you can all make cookies. So that can mean that they're stirring the batter, or you're making a bunch of cookies and you need 6 eggs. So they can take the eggs out of the container and count exactly how many eggs are needed for this batch of cookies. And then you may want to focus on the task rather than the outcome. So if you're making cookies and there's a little too many chocolate chips in them, that's okay. They're cookies. They're still going to taste good. And even if it's not what you expected, you're focusing on the task and working together and being together rather than what the end is. We also want to provide a quiet place. If you're in a large group or if it's just a group of 2, if things become overwhelming, we want to have a quiet place to recharge. We also want to plan meaningful activities. So for me, the do-it-yourself arts and crafts do not work for me. I am bad at them and they are not fun for me. So if someone were to plan a meaningful activity for me, that really wouldn't be too meaningful for me. So what is meaningful for them? And what's meaningful for your person may change over time. What's meaningful for them 10 years ago may not be meaningful now. So how can we plan these activities that are going to work best for them? And we also want to keep outings brief. So this is quality over quantity. You don't have to be out all day to have fun. So we can modify these traditions. So I want to quickly address Alzheimer's disease and the 5 senses. Alzheimer's disease and dementia can impact the 5 senses, but we can also use the 5 senses to engage in activities. So first we have sight. As I said before, we want to be aware of colors and decorations that can be overstimulating, but we still want to invoke the holiday spirit for whatever that means for you and your family. Oh, we lost a holiday decoration. That's okay. So you can still have decorations, but we can be mindful to ensure we're not over cluttering the area and keeping it, in tune for them. So we also have smell. So what can we do to make the atmosphere more reminiscent of the holidays? So can we use aromatherapy or lotion, or when we are baking cookies, put that fan on so that the whole house smells like cookies? How can we have this sense really in the forefront for this season as well? So we also have taste. So we can offer foods with different textures, different kinds of foods, different spices to make things more exciting. But we also want, with dementia, to pay attention to overeating or undereating. That can be affected with this illness. And taste can really change over time too. So that's okay if tastes change. We can adapt and change. If they always ate pumpkin pie, but now they're craving pecan, then that's something that we can work with. But just being aware of how tastes can change as well. And I also have hearing. So we have that holiday music, which is so beneficial. And it can really connect us to what's important and to our loved ones. But we also don't want music to be too loud, too crazy. So like I said, we keep it simple. And then lastly, we have touch. So we can find ways to explore tactile activities and create moments where touch is being satisfied. So as the weather gets cooler, we can rely on fuzzy sweaters and soft blankets to provide that comforting touch. So if you want to touch your person, we just want to make sure that they're comfortable, that everything is warranted touch. Again, especially with COVID, we have to communicate about what touch is wanted and what touch isn't. So just being aware of that. So we're going to move on to activities, but Kara, is there anything I missed or anything you just want to add?
No, I think we're doing great. And I've just had a few people comment about, the 5 senses you're talking about and how useful it is. And just to let them know that we're going to be sending this presentation out afterwards. But that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. Definitely. So now we're going to move on to some activities. So I want to talk about the AFA Teal Room. So this is a virtual opportunity to help individuals affected by Alzheimer's disease and their caregivers to stay active and engaged. This started in the pandemic and we have kept it every day. There's programs every day. It includes music, art, dance and movement, fitness, gardening, why I couldn't say that, virtual tours, and they're just so awesome, and they're all hosted by certified experts in the field, and they're all coordinated by our wonderful manager of therapeutic programming, Jackie Gatto. So once you're done watching this presentation, you guys can head on over to AFA's Teal Room. But in the meantime, special thanks to Jackie for giving us these really exciting and innovative and inclusive ideas for activities during this season. So first we have sensory activities. So there are fidget blankets, which help people with dementia with restless hands, trying to alleviate agitation by focusing on something. So there are these blankets or quilts that have different activities like tying a knot or petting something soft, or like putting your hand around in a circle. They're very cool, and you can either make one by hand if you're artsy, or you can buy one, but it's just a tactile blanket where we can engage in touch. There's also sensory-based art, so fingerprinting, collaging with tactile paper. We also have sensory toys or objects like rainmakers, zippers, or sensory mats. So sensory mats are similar to fidget blankets, and they just stimulate and soothe people with Alzheimer's disease and dementia through touch. And then also household chores, just the little things that can actually make a difference. So folding laundry, sorting socks, washing dishes, the soap on the hands. And if you're doing gifts for the holiday season, perhaps taking the wrapping paper or organizing bows, that's a way that we can engage, our senses. So then next we have cognitive activities. So like memory card games, board games, puzzles, Mad Libs, fill in the blank games, and trivia. I know there's some really awesome trivia on AFA's Teal Room. But so if your person really loves baseball, find some baseball trivia. So we want to keep things specialized and, like I said, meaningful for them. I also think Mad Libs is such a good suggestion. You can really work that brain muscle, and it really engages, the creative and imaginative aspect that I feel like so often we lose. And we just kind of encourage these kind of activities for general brain health as well. And it's a really interesting way to engage people across generations with these kinds of activities. So then we have mind and body. So all of these are in some variation on the Teal Room. So that includes yoga, chair or standard practice, some low impact fitness, meditation, or actively listening to music. So for exercise, maybe going for a walk is not accessible, but maybe some light stretching is. So we encourage to find activities that work and are engaging. Not all of these are going to work for you and your family. I really like actively listening to music. I feel like this is just really new and interesting. So we can ask questions during the experience of, do you like this part of the song? What did you enjoy more about this, the drum solo or the guitar solo? So it's just other ways to kind of have this enriching experience. And so the next we have reminisce. So we can scrapbook, look through old photos, watch family videos, or watch the oldie movies, the goodies. And my personal favorite is using Google Maps. I've seen with COVID, a lot of people having these virtual vacations. I think this is just such a good idea. We talked previously about connecting with loved ones through technology, and we have this technology. So how can we use it to benefit us? So you can use Google Maps to have a tour of your favorite city or your favorite vacation spot, or maybe someone's hometown that you haven't been to in a while. And our last group of activities we have out and about. So what can we do to find fun and be safe and engaging and interact with our environment? So maybe taking a scenic car ride together, visiting a restaurant or cafe that isn't too busy or crowded, seeing a matinee film, or visiting a museum. So this is, again, finding what works for you in your area and within reason and accessibility. So I want to thank Jackie again for these really great suggestions. Like I said, the Teal Room has activities every day virtually, so it's an excellent resource to implement some of these meaningful activities. But the purpose of listing all these different kinds of activities is to find what may work best for you and for your family. So this is also trial and error and how things can change over time. So maybe meditation for 2 minutes with your loved one on the phone in the evening is what is accessible and achievable for you. These are different suggestions to create, these dementia-friendly holidays. But you all are experts in what you're experts in your family and in your lives, so you'll be able to find what's best. And our goal in this discussion is to find ways to see what traditions can be adapted and really understanding everyone's situations are different. So we want to make sure to check in with ourselves on the following. We want to know that each person within their unique context. So identities shift, especially as the disease progresses. A person is more than their diagnosis, and as an accomplished adult with unique histories, they should be treated as such. And we want that strength-based approach again, to focus on strengths rather than dwelling on deficiencies. Individuals with dementia still have many strengths throughout the progression of the disease, so it's important we look at that. So when we focus on the person behind the illness, we can really create celebrations that are dementia friendly. So Now we have time for some question and answers. I really want to thank you all so much for hanging out with us so far. But we have Kara back on the camera now. And like I said, she's our senior social worker, and she works on our national toll-free helpline every day. So she's speaking with people all the time and giving really great suggestions on coping and adapting to the holidays. So Kara's going to lead us in answering some of the questions that you may have asked. So I can open up some of the questions. We have so many questions. This is awesome. So let me find something. Any advice on having people over that maybe our person doesn't know, Kara?
So when you first asked that question, I'm kind of thinking about, is it because the person, used to know them, they've never seen them before in their life? So kind of what's the definition of she doesn't know? If it's someone she's not knowing and she's asking about, we can introduce them. If it's something where it's repetitive, we'll just allow that to play out. So let's say, I brought someone home, and let's say Laurel was coming over, and she's never met Laurel. I might just keep reintroducing her and being set and letting her know, see this person right here? This is Laurel. Laurel is going to be with us here today. If it's something where there's no triggers, because sometimes if we haven't seen people in a while, and we do just want to take that note in with just how measures have been with restrictiveness, that people haven't been around a lot of people, so there could just be general anxiety. So we just want to be prepared in that way. So if it's someone that the person has, never met and it is causing a trigger, then we just want to be aware of that. So we just want to see what that interaction is first, and then have a kind of plan for what's going to happen. So if they are unsure, right, and they're getting a little nervous, if they are uncomfortable, maybe just having that person sit in another room, or we can even talk with our person saying, is there too many people in here right now? Why don't we go take a break? Why don't we go into this space? This way, we're also not pinpointing the person, who did come in to the room. So I would say, let's see if we can introduce. We're going to do it in a calm, very nonchalant tone. This way, we're not adding that kind of tone of feeling worried or anything like that. And we'll test it out. We'll try it out. Let's see how it goes with that interaction.
Yeah, I think that's so great. I have another question. Mom wants holiday gathering at her house, but it's overwhelming for her, and she gets frustrated and confused with time frames. You're thinking it's easier to come to a daughter's house so mom isn't exhausted and can enjoy the holiday. So what do you think, Kara?
Yeah, I think if it's something where it's overwhelming, right, for everyone to be in her place, and if she's trying to, get things ready, but there's also that orientation to time. So we do know, right, obviously with the rhythm cycle, and as you mentioned, Laurel, sundowning, time does have an impact, on the individual's reaction. So if it's overwhelming for this person, let's have it at the daughter's place, but let's prepare for that. So if she's at the daughter's place and she's not seeing some sort of grounding object or something tangible that she's used to seeing at a holiday, let's make sure we bring it. So especially because I think you mentioned she cooks or used to, host it, if there's certain particular decorations, or, if she used to have a certain bowl or plate that's very specific for their setting. Like, if you're having a Seder, there's certain plateware that you use to separate certain foods. So if that's something that's at her home, let's making sure we bring those over to her place, and also making sure there is that safe and quiet space for her to go. If she asks why it's not at her place, because I'm not sure if that's a question that would come up or not. If she's asking, why aren't we going home? We have to prepare, say, we're giving you the day off today. You do such a great job. This is your day. We're here to serve you today. That language, sometimes it can work. Sometimes we might have to switch it up. As Laurel mentioned, it's going to be a little trial and error seeing which words are going to work best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And we have someone who mentioned, my mother made holiday name tags for all of our guests for a holiday family party, and everyone wore a name tag. I think that is such a good idea. So
That's so
thank you,
smart.
Carla, for that suggestion. That's
Yeah.
very, very, very smart.
And you're not pinpointing a certain person. I think that's
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah, just keeping things very familiar and that everyone's involved in that experience. Everyone's wearing a name tag, so everyone just feels comfortable. So do we have any activities or any things that we can do, ways to spend time with more advanced loved ones who are bedridden, with limited verbal and mobility ability?
Yeah, and I think anytime we're trying to find any ways to celebrate, we're going to do it at whatever the capacity of the person that can. And so if it's something where they are bedridden, obviously they're not going to be, getting up and things like that. What is very meaningful can be the power of touch and just being present. So if the person also is having, I would say, hearing issues, or visual issues, what are ways that we can interact through touch, through being there? If they can't move, right, do we go back and do we try to use music, right? Do we do, a certain service, whether it's a prayer or a reading? Do we invite if the grandkids, right, want to come over and sit and maybe talk, right? If the person is not visually, but maybe verbally, right, or hearing wise, they might be stronger. So it goes back to that senses. So which sense do we struggle with the most? And then which sense does our person seem to interpret and communicate the best through? So we kind of want to first see which of those and kind of go off of that, whether it's touch. This might seem a little crazy, but sometimes I've had people, if they can't visually or hearing, they're struggling, but they still can do things with touch. This might seem a little out there, Laurel, but they might actually take like the cookie dough and let the person actually touch it into the baking pan. So this way that person is still participating, right? So all that would need is that we just bring a tray to them and we would just hold their hand and press it on each one, and they're still participating in the cooking or, the festivities, so to speak.
I love that. I think that's such a good idea. And that things don't have to be really crazy when we're making these suggestions, but it's small little things that can be more inclusive. And I love that idea of we're engaging that sense of touch. We may not be able to engage in other senses, but here is how we can, accentuate that sense. So that's great. Speaking of senses, we have someone that mentioned that their family, they're struggling with their aunt who is blind.
Yeah, and this definitely makes it harder, especially if you can't visually see anything. So I want to think first if, she's not able to see the decorations, but she can understand, right, my hearing and my sound of my voice. Can I talk about things we've done before? Do you remember that time that you and Dad took me to go see the tree in Rockefeller? Oh, those lights were just so pretty, right? And talking about wherever you guys are, if you're a suburban area, right? And even if it's just like the snow outside, remember a white holiday, white Christmas, or, anything that you're celebrating particularly. Is there anything that we can talk about? Can we use sounds? And I think that's something that you touched on, Laurel, right? Playing music, things like that, if we can uplift a person's spirit in that way. Sometimes I think it's also important to remember we don't always need something. Being a presence and being with our person is a very meaningful gesture. And so, if our person doesn't know us by sight, by sound, just being able to sit with them and spend quality time with them. I think that's what it really comes down to at most times, especially when we're thinking that later stages of this disease who's more advanced.
Totally. I completely agree. And I think that also, just goes hand in hand with utilizing virtual technology. If I
Yeah.
can see my family on the other side of the country, I can give them a call, and that's a way that we can connect as well. Even if physically our presence can't be there, we can have our presence virtually there. And
Yeah.
that's so important too.
You actually remind me of something, Laurel. I actually had someone do this and it worked where if they virtually, right, like let's say you couldn't connect in person.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I was trying to call you, Laurel, and what I would do is I would actually put on a heating pad to simulate warmth.
Oh, I
So
love
almost
that.
like a virtual hug almost. Obviously that would need to be monitored. So this is a technique that, typically we would use for long distance caregiving. But this is something that can be applied to, if you're not able to be with your person, if your person's in a facility, so forth. Just to simulate that warmth of and attaching that warmth of the heating pad to the sound of that person.
Mm-hmm. That's so innovative. That's why I feel like there's so many different ideas, and maybe like heating pad, like for you and your person, that does not
Yeah.
work. But maybe for someone else it does. They also have like the weighted blankets.
Mhm. Mhm.
Have, they put that on, and it kind of like addresses like the pressure points that are on your body, that it feels like you're being hugged. So those are also a lot of things. I feel like we could sit here for the next 20 minutes and go back and forth with different suggestions and ideas. But we won't. I also have someone here who said there are stuffed animals called warmies that
Mhm.
are lavender scented, and they're heated up in the microwave, and they're very comforting. They're warmies. That
Mhm.
sounds like the nicest thing, because you have
Yeah.
a soft animal, so you're getting that touch. It's warm, so
Mhm.
that can be really cozy. And
Mhm.
then the lavender, you're getting that aroma that's super
Yeah.
calming, engaging that sense as well. So that is a great suggestion. That is awesome.
Mhm.
Um, so I also have here, sorry, lost it.
Okay.
Plans if for an activities, tips for celebrating with a family member with dementia that's in a care facility.
Mhm. Yeah, and so many people obviously, it gets to a point when you're caring for someone, you end up going to memory care facility just because of the overwhelming amount of work. So ways to celebrate, I would say knowing first and foremost what the policies are going to be in place for that facility. Just so you're aware of kind of what they're communicating with you in terms of those steps first, what's going to be allowed, what's not. Just because I know certain places were, and this is nationally, certain places were allowing people to bring in food, people weren't. So just make sure you know kind of what the setup routine is for, especially if you're allowed to take your person home. I know some people are considering that. And with that, what we want to do is just make sure we're really sticking with the person's routine if we're doing that. If we're going to be visiting them in a facility, right? What's the best time of day? So, as Laurel mentioned earlier, right? If our person is experiencing sundowning, I don't think, going to trying to have a service or some sort of, ritual or celebration at night, right? That's probably not going to be the most conducive,
Mm-hmm.
and probably going to be a hard experience for our person. So what we might do is we might have to change some of those traditions and move them up to earlier, maybe in the day, especially if maybe after breakfast is when we know our person is at their best, or during lunchtime is at their best. Paying attention to different decorations or things that are in the facility is important to know too. Some places will set up, some places won't. So this way you also know how to handle the conversations of if your person is not coming to the home, but they're seeing the decorations and they're like, well, shouldn't I be coming over to you guys soon? This way you're kind of prepared, like, oh yeah, we're going to be celebrating, on Thursday at this time. I'm so happy that you remembered. We're going to bring this dish and this one. just so you're kind of prepared in that way. So also knowing if there's going to be a certain room set up, if there's going to be a party. So sometimes places will host, events and celebrations consistently through the holiday season as we're, getting into it now. And previously we were obviously in it in September a little bit too, for depending on your denomination. So we just want to make sure that if they are having something, is that something our person wants to participate in? So not everyone always wants to be in a large room, surrounded by a lot of people, a lot of sounds. It can be overstimulating. So we just want to make sure that if there is a celebration, ask your person if they want to go to. If it's not something that they want to do and they'd rather do something a little bit smaller, more enclosed, seeing if the place that they're at has a separate room for that, or if you can come in, kind of just going over the logistics in that way. So that way you guys are on the same page of what the plan is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's great. And your point on they may not want to be in the large room with the big gathering. Maybe a couple years ago, they were always hosting and wanted to go to this person's house and that person's house, but now it's just become a little too much. We want to recognize that that's okay, that they don't have to go to the big celebration for whatever. And acknowledging that those changes are super valid. I want to encourage the questions to keep on coming. I feel like these are great. But just to address some of the housekeeping, this is recorded and you will be able to view it at a later date. And you will have all of these resources, including the 5 senses. So you'll be able to check all that out. And the Teal Room is at our website, and I have it right here. So right at the bottom, I don't know if you can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay, so it's right at the bottom, www.alzfdn.org, where you're able to find, you'll be able to find this recording as well as the AFA Teal Room. And these are just a couple of AFA's resources, but you will be able to see everything. There are so many things that we have to offer at our website. So do we have any other questions that we can address?
Yeah, I mean, I know there was one that actually came up recently on the helpline. Maybe I can use that as an example.
Yeah, for sure.
We did have someone who asked about if they've had their person come over before, but their person doesn't like to sit still. And actually will just kind of keep moving, which is great. We want to work on creating movement and not restricting it. So if you notice that they don't want to sit down for an entire, tradition or ritual, like, sitting in, like, for example, sitting in opening presents, right? That's a long process. Depending on how big your family is, it can be a long process, papers here, bows here. If the person has animals, it can be a lot. And you're usually, for the most part, sitting in that scenario. So what we talked about was, does this person need to be there for the entire unwrapping? Do they really need to be there, right? If this person feels like they can't sit and just, watch, is there a way that they could maybe be in another room doing something else? Or can they come and watch for a little bit, but then maybe the whole group takes a break so everybody can stretch their legs? I actually suggested, kind of like the sport of baseball, Laurel, you do I think it's the seventh inning
stretch.
Yeah. So it was like, well, can we do something like that? Right? If we're doing a lot, let's all stand up as a family. Let's take a quick stretcher together, and we're going to add it as part of our tradition. Another thing we talked about is if, she doesn't feel in that moment that she's, involved in that process, the unwrapping and things like that, can she collect the bows? Right? Can we give her a bag and everyone brings the bows to her? So then she knows she's in charge of something. And it allows her to be included. So this way, the person's not sitting there kind of, also being antsy as a way. So we just want to basically make sure we're incorporating them. And if the person's, it's something that they can't be incorporated at a certain level because they want to make sure they're taking a break to do something else, we're just going to make that part of the routine, especially if we know at 2 o'clock is like their Zumba time and they like watching the YouTube video and doing small exercise, from their chair, then let's make sure at 2 o'clock we keep that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what would you do in your position if someone mentioned that their person, during this holiday season, it was bringing up a lot of negative emotions, that the holidays, as happy as they can be, sometimes can be very sad equally. So how would you recommend someone address that?
Yeah. So a lot of times holidays and things like this can be associated with negative, what we call emotion memory. And this is something actually that our supervisor, Jennifer, touches on. And so that's something that stays with a person, is the feeling. And so what I want to do in that moment, if it's something that's coming up, and they're not able to process what's going on but they're stuck in that emotion, I want to acknowledge it, because I don't want them to feel like their feelings aren't valid. So in that moment, let's say, they're not happy with kind of anything going on. I'd be like, I'm sorry this isn't, what you wanted it to be, but I'm still happy that you're here. If they're still kind of complaining, about different things. And I think it's important to note that we remove that negative connotation with complaining. This is a person who's not doing this purposefully or intentionally. This is someone living with a disease. So it's not always easy to, when we have the process, right? Like if Laurel and I are upset or stressed out, we can kind of name it, and we're able to kind of, process it and be able to kind of move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
With someone with this disease, I could be feeling sad about something and kind of stuck in that, maybe that negative funk, but my brain's not cueing me to get out of it, and I don't know how, so I'm stuck there. And that's hard too. So we just want to address that things might be difficult. And then you can also ask them and transfer that independence back and ask them, well, since this seems to be a lot and it's tough for you, to sit here with everything going on, do you want to go sit in another space, or are you okay if I sit with you? So I'm giving them two options to kind of pick from, if that makes sense. And I didn't know if you have anything else to add to that, Laurel.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's great. And something else I want to make sure that we touch on is if we're having young people or children, and how do we, let them know what's happening in the holidays when we're talking about being open and being transparent, that can be different for different groups, being open and talking about Alzheimer's disease. So what do you think are really great strategies to use during the holidays?
Yeah. So I think with children and, young people, I think, again, we want to be open about what's going on. We want to destigmatize this disease, and people can live happy with this. So, and also I think it just creates that open communication. So I may say something like, let's say if it's a grandmother, I say, grandma is acting this way because grandma has a brain condition. And so sometimes it makes it difficult to do that. Sometimes this is going to vary on the age. So obviously the way I'm saying it might be for a little bit an older child, but I would also want to say, just like I get sad or upset sometimes, so does grandma, right? I also want to be realistic about everyone has all these emotions. So I'm not here to, sugarcoat it or hide it. I just want to say, you know how sometimes that, you struggled with picking up your fork to eat your spaghetti. Sometimes grandma struggles with her fork and her spaghetti. So just kind of pointing out that we're all human, whether we have a disease or not. We're not perfect. Mistakes happen, things like that. We all have feelings. So I think kind of breaking it down in that way.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's awesome. And it does seem like we're getting to the close of this webinar. So before we say goodbye to all of you, Kara, is there anything else that you want to make sure that we address before we leave?
Yeah, I think just make sure you guys are taking your time as you're trying different stuff out. If things come up and you want to talk to us about a specific example, Laurel put our information right there, and we can definitely kind of take things more in context of a specific situation and help and reach out. But I think do the best you can with the situation, what's going on, and just pay attention to how that person's feeling in the moment. And then from there, make the decision on kind of what's the best course action next.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
So thank you. And thank you to everyone who attended. I hope that you took value out of this, but most importantly, we're here for you, whether it's the holidays or not. So I have our nationwide toll-free helpline here. We're now 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. So no matter how little or how small, we are here to help every step of the way. So thank you all so much for coming to this presentation, and we hope to see you at another one soon.
Yes, and thank you to Laurel for sharing all this helpful information with us. I can't speak high enough of how I think great that this is to allow a space for everyone to have these questions and opportunity to learn. So thank you for opening a space for everyone today.
Awesome. Thank you, Kara, and thank you all, and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye.